Welcome to the Secret Men's Business Podcast. This is Joey Butterfield, and hi, welcome back to our series of mental health conversations with special people, intellectual people, educational people from around the world. Now, on today's show, we're going to be talking about emotional tolerance and how emotional tolerance can impact men in the way that they see the world. Now, on today's show, we're going to be speaking to Chris Plourde from the US, and he's going to be talking to us about emotional tolerance and tell us how men can actually probably become more in touch with their emotions and learn to use emotions to their advantage. Chris, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
No, that's good. I mean, I'm finding that I'm actually speaking to more Americans than I am Australians. So I feel like I'm now getting really used to your accent.
Yeah.
So before we start, do you want to just tell our audience a little bit about yourself, your background?
Great. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a conscious performance coach. I coach people in all areas of life. I look at the full spectrum of what they do and how they do it. The inner why of what's working for them, what they're running towards in life, and trying to get them not to run away from what they don't want, but kind of put that vision up and go, this is what I want. And a lot of it is about reformulating different things that have happened for them in their life, about saying, here's what I went through. Here are the amazing things that happened for me, no matter how hard they were, and going, this is my story, and these are my gifts that came from these particular things that I went through, and how can I use those to go and be in service of the world, humanity, and really feel that fulfillment and happiness that they all deserve, along with success, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, I love the way that there is a current theme that's going on in regards to how men or therapists or coaches are helping men. It really makes you realize how long we've waited. If you think back only a few years ago and there was no talk about all this. Just out of curiosity, what was your career or your life like before you became a coach? Or have you always been one?
Well, I always have been. I have a business degree, marketing business degree. I interned at Walt Disney World, Florida, business internship there. I worked for companies like Xerox, Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I did medical device sales. But all of those companies that I worked with, even though they were amazing experiences and incredible training, they never gave me the fulfillment I was looking for. I always felt a little bit depleted in the middle of working with those organizations. Again, no fault of their own. They have a certain culture, but it was just where I was in my path didn't align with that. Glad I did it. I got to understand and learn a lot, but where my calling was really working with people. I was in the fitness industry for 20 something years. I was able to work with people from all walks of life, celebrities, business people, executives, CEOs, moms, dads, military, special ops people. And I also got to travel around the world presenting at various conferences and certifying thousands of instructors and just really helping them evolve into the fitness professionals they were meant to be. And then I got to a point where I go, okay, there's more to it than this. And I started feeling this calling happening about what else can I do? How can I bring all of my material that I developed into the deeper realm of man? And so one day, one of my clients asked me, he goes, will you come speak to my sales team? He had a company that had about 20 different sales account reps or salespeople. And so I came and gave some of my insight, and I started coaching them one-on-one about what to do better, like taking a break, putting up boundaries, taking a vacation, implementing different tactics and strategies, taking better care of themselves, meditation aspects, right? Really getting them focused on what was their drive and how did they learn best. So in about a 3 months period of time, we kind of looked at it, and I worked closely with the vice president of sales, the sales manager, and we had a 30% increase in sales over a 3-month period of time, and the highest sales that the company has seen in 28 years.
Wow.
And never speaking really about money once. We didn't look at the charts. We just really worked on the individual and how they held and viewed themselves.
Yeah.
So
and
that was,
it shows you, doesn't it, that it's, people didn't know that. Like it doesn't, it's not really rocket science, isn't it? I don't know if you realize you could have also added model to your CV. So emotional tolerance, right? So can you give us an overview of what that means to you and what impact it has on men? I know it's a big subject, but I mean, I read it on your profile and all that, and so I thought, okay, this is a really interesting topic that we haven't spoken about. So what does it mean when someone says, oh, you need to be emotionally tolerant?
Right. So I think the short answer of it is being able to feel and deal with the emotions that are coming up in the moment. That's the short of it, right? Think about if I bring it back to fitness world, right? If you're training for, I'm going to do a marathon and you've never really run past a mile. Well, your tolerance is going to be, I can only run a mile or two, right? But you start to train and you start to look at these things as a human, as we develop, and you go, oh, here's this emotion, here's this fear, oh, this is anger, this is anxiety, and you start to understand what they are, but not only what they are, but where did they come from in your life? Where did they stem from? Or who was the person that instilled them in you? Right? So example, my mom was one of 8. She came up in a very scarce environment, and, they were great loving family, but there was a lot of lack of. So her whole way of raising me was like, you need to get a job with good benefits so that you can survive and do better than I did. And I want to please, right? So, and she always wanted to look good. And so anything that went wrong in life was like, don't tell this person that, don't tell that person that. Amazing, huge heart, my mother. But it was like the need to look good and not be in this messy place was very important to her. And what I've realized is the messiness is where we have the most growth, right? Yeah. Some people say the messy middle is where you find your story. So being able to own those emotions as opposed to pushing them down and pretending they're not there is very important, I think, for our growth as our soul growth, if you want to put it that way, right? And where we're going.
I mean, I love it. I listening to you, I realize that that's, it's exactly the formula that I use with my clients. But also, it's like we've come from the same mother. And it could just be that generation was very much about the picket fence and everyone's sort of having that same look. And, you don't talk about emotions and all that. So that's right. When you talk about that from a male perspective, what would be the advantages? Because, I know a lot of listeners listen to this podcast to learn, but a lot of people go, oh, that's too hard. And they don't see the advantages. So in your coaching, what advantages have you seen with men that have connected emotionally and they've been tolerant?
Quite simply, it's emotional. It's freedom within. It's feeling that freedom within. When I work with companies or organizations, and I just got back from Mexico. I did this big retreat with about 50 CEOs, and we asked them on a scale of 1 to 10, how fulfilled are you in your life? Not how successful are you. They all were making millions in their companies, right? How fulfilled are you in your life? And the average answer was about 5 or 6. 5 or 6. Really? Meaning they can be successful, but are you happy and fulfilled in your life? And when we really get to the nitty gritty of that, and you get to that with them, it's like, oh, do you want to be here for the rest of your life in this 5 or 6? Or do you really want to operate from a 9 or 10? Because guess what? They're not getting the best of you. Your employees are not getting the best of you. Your family is not getting the best of you if you're operating at a 5 or 6 or a 4 or 3, whatever it is. So the ability to really feel that fulfillment takes courage. And it takes this moment of going into yourself and saying, what is that emotion that I'm feeling? It's vulnerability. which is so important. And most men go, no, I can't feel that vulnerability. I can't show the weakness. Well, if you guys need stats, men need stats. There's actually studies out from Stanford that show if you are working from the left side of your brain, the survival part of your brain, which is where the judge, the hypervigilant, the controller, all these, I can go on and on and on about this, but where this, probably a lot of you have built your companies on, right? You only got into a certain degree there. My goal as a coach is to get them to come from that right side of the brain, from that more sage, or if you like Star Wars, that Jedi-like way, where you get to work from a compassionate place, a more innovative place, a more creative place. And if we can bring you and get those neural pathways to be burnt so that you're forming new neural pathways and come from that right side of the brain, science studies show not only you're going to be exponentially happier, 30% more increase in sales, living 10 years longer, right? And just a more fulfilled, happy person. That's what we're looking for. And everything else gets to rise up in your life because you did the work to get yourself there.
Yeah. Why do you think all of a sudden, I know, again, you mentioned COVID earlier, and I think that's a part of it, but why all of a sudden is all this male vulnerability, emotional tolerance, all becoming such a buzz thing? Like, do you think that there was a moment that men had to face up to? Like, you've obviously been doing this work for a long time. So what is the reason that this has all now become so important? That's not on my list of questions, by the way, but I'm listening to you and I'm going, like, why are people wanting to do that now?
Well, I think because we're seeing what's not working, right? This hierarchy of man, this patriarchy of the world is starting to crumble. I mean, the United States elected its biggest villain, whatever you want to call it, but last election, we're not going to get into politics, but
no, I was going to say it's the name. It's the name that we didn't say.
That's right. But look at if you could take a caricature of that and all that has been done and go, what did we just do? Right? Granted, forget about the beliefs or the political views or whatever. Just look at the integrity or the lack thereof in general. So if we want to just put that on the table, but look at how we operate and look at what's happening in these corporations, there's a big downfall happening and things are crumbling slowly but surely. We can see it in the entire world. Yeah. And so if we want to keep it the same way it was, if you always do what you always done, you're always going to get what you always got, right? That goes for us as individuals and that goes for us as a world, right? So it's time to make a shift, and we have to be the ones that have the courage to actually say, what do I want to do? This has gotten me here, but that's not going to get you there, right? So it's time to shift, and it's time to do things in a different way. Yeah. I would have thought, this is my opinion, but I thought that maybe Me Too was a pivotal moment. Like, do you think that was a pivotal moment? That men were hiding behind I can't be weak. And then all of a sudden men were being called out. And so the vulnerability started to come out. That's what I noticed in Australia. It was like men were really becoming scared of women in a way because they didn't know what they could do. So that vulnerability was able to come out. And I think that because it's been sort of brewing for a while, hasn't it? Yeah. I literally had a conversation not only about an hour ago with someone who has 3 teenage boys. And she's starting to have these conversations. She's scared for them coming up, going, you have to be very, very careful about how you're interacting with women. Permission, right? Respect. That's heightened in everything that we do now. Consent. So yes, that was, I think, the beginning of what is happening now. Yeah. But there's also a lot of movements going on. Like when I first discovered what vulnerability was, I joined a men's organization 12 years ago, right? I was on a men's team for 12 years and I stopped, and now I'm back on a men's team in a different organization. But what that showed me was not only leadership development skills that I learned, how to bring my truth to other men and not be judged for it, but being accepted for where we're at, knowing that I'm not in it alone, right? Becoming leaders within the organization and learning how to run certain things in a way that hasn't been taught in academia, right? Then going to different weekends and initiation weekends. I think the lack thereof initiation for men in the modern day society is prevalent. Like, how do you initiate men into manhood? You know, Judaism has it to a certain degree, but not in the way that I was initiated, not in a way that a lot of these men kind of find themselves or break through the layers and the armor that I've put on and take down the mask that they have built up for so long and say, you know what, this isn't who I'm supposed to be. You know, your soul speaks to you every day. And if you can slow down a little bit and listen, that's when you're going to start to hear the answers, because we all have the answers within us.
Yeah. I mean, I think, the key word that you mentioned was courage. And it's interesting. I had a crisis about 16 years ago, and that crisis was the reason why I looked at vulnerability. So, I know that a lot of men sometimes wait. So what are you feeling are some of the excuses or some of the reasons that men give that they're not ready or they can't do it? Like you mentioned before, either due weakness. So what have you heard? Because I do think that we need to try and show. I try and teach my clients not to be waiting for the crisis, because to be honest, that crisis was terrible. I don't want anyone to go through that. And if you could do it sooner. So, what are some of the things that stop men? What are they telling themselves? What are the stories that they believe? You think, so we get an idea for the audience.
Well, first of all, to go back to the crisis things, if we were to really look at what that is. And I know we only have half an hour, but it's like, I know you said you wouldn't wish that upon anybody, but what did you learn from that for yourself? And like, what are those lessons you walked away with? What are the gifts that you found out about yourself, and how now can you use those gifts and be in service?
Yeah. Like, so I became a therapist because of that crisis. So I thank that crisis now. But at the time, what had happened was I had a relationship breakup, and I didn't have any skill. I didn't have any tools to deal with that, because I was giving. And so I think I probably experienced what it meant to have rock bottom, because I was suicidal. I got major anxiety. I was in corporate, and I just wasn't able to go to work. And so all of my life got turned upside down. And so I had no other option. Right. And so was the thing. But looking back at that, I really don't recognize that person, but I learned a hell of a lot. Like,
Right.
So I share that story with a lot of my clients, but a lot of clients still, I believe they're in that they're inching away from a crisis, and they still don't see that there's an issue. They come up with all these reasons. So what are some of the things that you hear?
Because that person right there was never you. With a person you don't even recognize, that was never you. That was someone's idea of success, of what you need to do in order to be happy. We'll go back to the parents. Most of our programming has happened from the age of 20 or below. Like why we do things now. The whole idea is now, how can we switch those ways of being, right? And so you ask the question, right? The biggest one that comes to me is, it's like large capital letters, fear. Right? Our ego, that person that you shed, was a layer of something that you were not, which held you from being the man that you are now. Right? And so when any change happens, you can feel it within your body somewhere. It's anxiety. It's like, oh my God, change is going to happen. It's actually your ego going, no, fucking no, stay where you are. This is comfortable where you are. Stay here. Right? This is where you should be.
Yeah.
And then think about the resistance with that is what actually makes us stronger. Without resistance, we're not going to get physically fit. We're not going to lose weight. We're not going to burn new neural pathways in our brains to form new habits. Resistance is there to make us tolerant, stronger, more tenacity. Emotional tolerance is increased so we can finally run that marathon, right? Why? By feeling those feelings and having the courage to feel the feels, right? It's not being a man by burying. That's what we were taught. It's unlearning that taught, right? But the only thing is owning the feelings,
Yes.
not victimized by the feelings. There's a big difference.
Yeah.
And that takes work.
Yeah. I mean, I knew that there was something in there, and I knew that there was a layer that I had created. And I agree with you in regards to my parents come from a very fear-orientated, belief. Like, instead of saying "have a great day," they'll say "be careful," right? So,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
right.
And so you're thinking, okay, what's going to happen?
Right.
But
Right.
I sort of feel that what you're saying, what I did was I accepted that layer with the new layer, and I brought them together. And so I was not then allowed me to surrender and not to bury anything. And so I feel like when everything's in front of you, then there's nothing to bite you, and you just grab what you want. This is what I feel, right? Like sitting right beside me right now is my drama from back then. It's a dog. I imagine it to be a dog, and I've trained it, and it doesn't look at me. I don't look at it, but it's here. Right. Well, while I was in it, the dog was on my face, licking me and biting me. And, so I sort of used that analogy that works for me to because in the past I would bury those things. I would say, I'm not that, I'm not this.
Right.
So can you just give us a bit of an idea? I know this is a big question again. What do you suggest a man does to start? How does someone who's never done this before, because they're going to go, oh my God, it's so big and I can't do that. What would you suggest as a starting point?
This is the hardest thing most man's men can do.
Yeah.
Ask for help.
So ask for help with anyone?
For help. No. Find someone that you can trust. A coach, a therapist, a friend that is modeling that for you. The thing is, first and foremost, we're doing the work to lay the groundwork and give permission to other people to do that. Right? You went through it. You have your story. I was a super sensitive kid that I thought there was something wrong with me in elementary school. So I got therapy thinking because I was so emotional that there was something wrong with me, and all my shame came up. So I buried myself in this athlete and tough guy, and, just everything was a nail that I had I was the hammer. But asking for help is the hard, and I still struggle with it sometimes. I'm going to be quite honest with you.
I agree. I do too.
Right. And there's plenty of organizations and there's plenty of people that are wanting to be in service, that are wanting for people to reach out and say, if it's not, let's work with a coach or a therapist for a year. Maybe it's, can you refer me to a group or a team that I can bare my soul, that I can be myself.
Can I just interject a little part here? Like America, right? You guys I think you guys are way more advanced with understanding the word therapy. So can I just get you to sort of brainstorm, just brainstorm a little bit with me, and imagine a culture like Australia where therapy isn't at your level, right? So it's still a dirty word here. I'll never forget when I told my family I was becoming a therapist, and they cried.
I love that. It's funny. When I told my mom I was getting therapy, she cried. She goes, "What did I do wrong?" She goes, "What did I do wrong?"
My dad said to me, "Don't you want to be a labourer?" I'm going, "Oh my God, you should be congratulating me."
Right.
So if you had, you work in very high performance people that are eager, they walk in, they want to do it. In Australia, there's still a bit of a macho boys club sort of culture. I'm not saying there isn't people that want it, but what would you say to those people?
Yeah. Well, I first of all, look in the mirror. Just stare in the mirror and go, do you love what you see? Do you love the man staring back at you, if we're talking about men specifically? Yeah. Right? Are you okay with who you are at this moment, and can you accept who you are and all the things that have happened for you, not to you? Right. And if the answer is no, are you okay living like that for the next 10, 20, 30, 50 years of your life? Yeah. And if the answer is, again, no, what are you going to do to jump into action to change that? Yeah. Right. Are you going to lead with fear? Are you going to let your ego dictate the way in those old patterns that happened? Or do you want to step up and lead with courage? Yeah. And ask for help and be okay with feeling some feelings, so that not only are you fulfilled, right, but your children. Yeah. You're modeling it for your spouses, for your friends. right? It takes one. If you want leadership, if you really understand what leadership is, right? It's not the old captain of the football team. There's a new paradigm of what leadership is. And leadership is being able to really lead from the heart and your gut. And that's where you're going to have the most amount of success in your life.
Yeah.
That when you fall, you get right back up. Right.
Yeah.
And if you're just playing and you're watching life from the arena, like at these games, and you're saying, I just want to be a fan my whole life and root on my team, or I want to be in the arena, I want to be in the field. I want to be playing full out. So when I get to the end, I might have some scars on me, but those are amazing scars. I might have some bruises. I might have gotten some rib shots and this and that. I might have a limp, but guess what? I'm happy.
Yeah.
And I lived life on my terms. Not that old programming that came in when I was younger. It's like now I get to choose. I get to be the man I always wanted to be.
Yeah.
Because I led with courage.
Yeah. I mean, again, courage is so much because it's like they're waiting for something. So in Australia, we're using sportsmen, influential people to make it, to normalize it. Like, for example, in the country, the farmers, there was a suicide rate increase. And so what they did was they talked about tractors, right? And the tractor was stuck in the mud, right? And then they would ask them, what would you do if your tractor got stuck in the mud? And the farmers would say, oh, you'd call your friends over and you'd push. And that's the way that they got them to understand asking for help.
Right.
By using a tractor. The thing that I use is video games. I say to them, when you're playing a video game and you're holding the console, you're the only person that can control the game. So that means everyone in the game is an avatar. No one's real. It's like, so everything has to come back to you. So, I've been trying to find ways to normalize it rather than people saying, oh, that's a bit hippie or that's a bit woke. Have you found the same, or are people more accepting there, you think?
Well, I'm in Southern California, but I grew up. I grew up in south of Boston, which was East Coast, more, southeast. Brockton was the town I grew up in, which was a very,
Irish,
blue collar Italian Irish background Italian. A lot of fighting, a lot of just low income type of stuff. So I understand what that was and is.
I was going to say Italian.
It is a language.
I was going to say Italian would be hard, wouldn't it? Wouldn't they be resistant to? Aren't they? Isn't there like a very? Some Maltese. There's a big European culture about no, you don't ask for help. Yeah. No, you just keep going. Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. Is it going to continue to be this? Right. Again, look at the next generation. Are you going? I know my parents wanted something better for me. Right. So that's why they said, go get a job at a good corporation, right? With good benefits. Right. And then you're going to be happy. That's what that's what they knew.
Money.
As you become more open to it, open to the idea. Right. And I know it's not just one thing, everyone's going to hear this a different way. And some people are already judging it and dismissing it. And if you're judging it, by the way, there's an unresolved trigger within yourself, right? That needs to look at, right? You're going to judge it. And judging is about looking at something that you haven't resolved within yourself.
Yes.
So for you, all that you were judging, that's cool. I get it. I'm totally worth being under the spotlight. But when your next generation comes up, whether you have kids or not, your nephews, your nieces, your community, do you want them to go through the same thing that you went through, or are you willing to be the example and the leader? To step into something a little different, to step into something that's going to be more fulfilled, that's going to be more successful. It is success. And if that's what you're shooting for and leading with money, fantastic, right? Let money be your thing, but don't let it be the number one thing that leads you through this life, because it's not going to get you happiness. I've worked with way too many people that have millions and billions of dollars in the bank account that are very unfulfilled, and they're hiding that unfulfillment with drugs, alcohol, other habits that don't work, sex, you name it. So, and that's not where the happiness lies.
Yeah. I want to ask you one more question. I know that we've gone a bit over, so thank you for being patient with me.
Of course.
I just want to ask you about your opinion of what you were saying about the future and those nephews and nieces. Are you optimistic? Are you optimistic?
Yeah.
There are moments when I think, oh my God, the world is it's so a bit weird at the moment. But that's just, I guess that's COVID, isn't it? But
Right.
how do you feel? How do you feel that question to people when they say,
Yeah.
"Oh, the world's fucked up. Why bother?
Yeah.
Why bother?"
Well, because we're here to do a job, to do our duty. I
Yeah.
mean, yes, we can look around us and we can choose to look at what's fucked up, right? Because there is a lot. But underneath that fucked up is a lot of pain and a lot of unresolved things that have happened for generation after generation, right? And in that you see why there is anger, why there is war, right? And there's an opportunity here to maybe not in this generation we're going to change it, but maybe in our kids' generation we get to change it.
I was going
Right?
to say, like,
And,
do you think that they do see different?
100%. As we do the work on ourselves, I have two kids, 15 and 9.
Okay.
That gives them permission to kind of go, oh, I don't have to do as much work on myself because mom and dad, they're doing this work on themselves, right?
Yeah.
We're looking at our things that aren't necessarily working in this life. And as we do that, it makes room for the next generation to come up. And by the way, this isn't like sensitive new age stuff, right? This is like, my son who's 15, he understands. He's an emotional kid, but he's a tough kid. He's working, he does his thing on a regular basis. He knows what it's like to fall down and get right back up, right?
Yeah.
He's good at that. He gets it. And he have his hardships? Absolutely. But maybe not the hardships I had. Maybe he's going to come out of school and go, oh, instead of going after the money, I'm going to go after this purpose and the money's going to follow me.
Yeah.
So am I optimistic? There's no other way to be. Do I get down sometimes? Absolutely. Do we get fired up at what's going on in the world and have our little rants and going, how could this happen? And go, yeah, sure. We can talk about a number of different things right now that my wife and I talk about on a daily basis. But this isn't this game we're playing or this life we're living. We get one opportunity. And if we're not making the most of it, if we're not waking up every day and saying, I can make a difference, then what's it for, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say
that's why you have this.
I was going to say, like you highlighted something about you and your wife. It sort of makes me realize and think that the parents are a big influence as well, aren't they? Like if the parents aren't doing the work, then sometimes the kids might not see. I've got a lot of clients at the moment that are 16, 15, and they've got anxiety. The parents bring them in, but I realize in that moment that it's the parents that have anxiety.
Yeah, 100%.
And the kids are just anxious because the parents aren't talking about the anxiety.
Yeah.
And so you try and talk to the parents and they just say, no, I'm not anxious. I'm going,
no.
So do you think that's a big part of it? The parents?
100%. The first question I ask when a parent wants to hire me to work with their kids, right? The first question I ask, I go, do you want me to work with them or does your kid want me to work with them? Right? Like who wants it more? Because 90% of the time, if I'm getting forced or something, or one of my colleagues is getting forced on by the parents to work with the kid, it's like the kid's like, no way, I don't want to do this, but it takes that, I want to work with the parent along with the child first to identify what it is that's happening, that's going on. I think it's really because it is a lot of projection.
It's the only way to have a unified community. You can't just have the kids go in therapy believing there's something wrong. It's got to be like everyone's got to. I think therapy needs to be the word needs to change, and we need to just call it fun or something, because it's
right. Well,
I find therapy.
Well, you
fun.
said it, community. You said it's community. It's a community-driven, culture, and so many of us have become individuals. Right? You're hiding behind that, but if you can look at that as the big picture, and we're all in this together, choose your tribe. Choose your tribe, right? Don't let it choose you. You go after those people that are doing the work, that are happy, that you're the sum of the 5 people closest to you, right? You're the sum of that. If you're like, oh shit, then let's relook at that a little bit. Doesn't mean you can't love the people that are in your family that you're hanging out with. You can still do that. No question about it. But what are the loving boundaries you can put up in order to evolve yourself? Right? You can still love them, but boundaries are a whole other series of things we'll talk about another time, I'm sure.
I was going to say I could talk to you for hours, and I think I need to reconsider doing my podcast for an hour because I feel like I'm at the end. I'm going, I don't want to stop.
Yeah.
But if you're open to it, I would love to have you back because you are. I mean, I'm finding these men, and I can't let them go now. These men that can explain things in a way that doesn't seem weak. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so you explain it in a way that I'm hoping my listeners will go, I get that. So thank you so much, Chris, for sharing your
pleasure.
intelligence and insights. And I can hear your kids in the background. That's really cool.
Yeah, they're running outside. They're right outside my office right now.
Yeah. So. Well, now that we can travel again, I hope to maybe, meet up with you because I come to LA. I love LA. That's my favorite city.
Oh, beautiful. We live just south of the airport, South Bay. We live of the airport right there. Cool. So I'm right there.
So I will put all your details below. So if anyone wants to reach out, they will have all your information. So Chris, thank you again and have a great day. Yeah, great to talk to you, Joe. I can't wait to do it again. Thanks so much. Bye, buddy. All right, buddy. Bye-bye. All right, thanks, mate. I'm going to cut it here. And